Here to discuss Republican Representative Tom Garrett Jr. from Virginia. Congressman, good to see you. So Attorney General Sessions has great respect for Rod Rosenstein, but the president says, you figure it out. Where do you stand on this?
Well, I think that that's a Trumpian way of saying no comment, but ultimately, let me be clear. Yeah,
but he could have said, he has nothing to worry about. He's doing a good job. And he didn't do that because he has done that before.
He also could have said he was going to fire him. But let me be clear. I would echo the sentiments of the director. I've worked with the FBI as a prosecutor. It is replete with fine women and men. However, most law enforcement professionals are good, too. That doesn't mean there are bad ones, right? So I think that the nuance that's being missed here is the FBI is good. There may be some bad folks who've done bad things inside of it.
Okay, so where are you on whether Rod Rosenstein should be worried about his job?
Well, ultimately, I have to flesh out the information that I'm given and arrive at conclusions. I don't have anything that rises to that level yet. I would certainly suggest that based on what I do know, having read both the Republican and Democrat memos, that there's certainly smoke there. But I think that this is probably an appropriate circumstance for an independent investigation as it relates to the alleged activities that would fly in the face of due process and privacy rights of Americans.
So does the memo reveal that there are some real problems that need to be addressed as it pertains to FISA court, or does this memo reveal something about how the Mueller investigation is not being conducted fairly? I mean, what was the primary objective of this memo? How do you interpret it? What are we to walk away with here?
I think that the American public needs to know if there's an instance where the levers of federal power have been leveraged against U.S. citizens. I think it transcends this memo and goes back to things like the IRS scandal. It goes back to, say, for example, the George W. Bush memo that said he didn't show up for his Air National Guard training that was never, to my knowledge, investigated, that we never got to the bottom of. When people try to influence our elections
for political
outcomes, then don't be surprised when it happens again, right?
But right now, here today, this memo, where we are with the investigation about Russia and its interference with U.S. elections, what do you want people to grasp from what just transpired yesterday, that this memo was released? What do you want people to know, understand, have clarity on?
Well, somebody doesn't care about getting a prosecution. They're more interested in getting a political outcome, and I'll tell you why. Delaware versus Franks, for the attorneys who are watching, would preclude the use of anything gathered by virtue of the false statements or lack of statements before the FISA court in court. So they wanted to get the information in a hurry, but any prosecutor understands Delaware v. Franks, and that obviously has shot the opportunity to use any of this in the foot. So it begs the question, why? And again, we know that FISA courts, the Washington Post has reported, have been weaponized against American citizens before.
And that's what you believe people will grasp from that memo?
I sure hope so. I think that the real danger here is that regardless of your political affiliation, you should be fearful of the government leveraging power against private citizens, contrary to their reasonable expectations of privacy and due process, and that's what I think has happened here.
So you do not believe the FBI or an entity like it should be able to investigate any American who may have some interaction with an adversary? Because isn't that what's at the core of the Carter Page FISA warrant request application?
No, I do believe, however, that due process and a duty of candor before the court undergird our legal system, and that's not here. So that's the problem. We've sort of omitted information as convenient as it relates to the facts supporting probable cause, thrown it before the court, and gotten surveillance permission against American citizens. That's draconian at best and really, really big brotherish frightening at worst.
Okay, so Congressman Adam Schiff weighed in on this, and he seems to believe that if this memo release is to be used to help get rid of the Deputy AG Rod Rosenstein, that really it would spell big trouble for the president. This is Adam Schiff.
But his statements today are very concerning about Rod Rosenstein. The fact that he's sort of dangling Rod Rosenstein's job. The firing of Rod Rosenstein, in my view, would be an act of obstruction of justice, just as firing Bob Mueller would be. It would be further evidence that what happened with James Comey was not an isolated act. So to me, that would be a very definite part of a pattern of obstruction of justice.
Do you think that this memo release was kind of a prelude to, Rod Rosenstein or justification for his firing or removal?
I would direct Schiff to Article 2 of the Constitution of the United States and ask him what part of executive authority is difficult for him to grasp. I mean, ultimately, this is within the
But
purview of the president, right?
Well, my question is it the feeling that this memo release is a prelude to some justification for the removal of Rod Rosenstein?
I think Rod Rosenstein should be removed if he should be removed. I don't have that information yet. What's important here is, regardless of your partisanship, that we need to understand if the levers of government power are being leveraged against American citizens outside the realm of due process and our inherent rights to privacy under the 4th and 5th and 14th Amendment. That's the scary thing. Well, and we saw that with the IRS scandal. Again,
if there were some real violations, the way in which these 4 judges went about granting a warrant for FISA, there is already a mechanism in place in which to investigate that. And there has been since the 70s when this FISA court came about. So why do you not trust that there isn't that investigation underway or a sound investigation that could be trusted if indeed there were some violations or due process not met or the FISA warrant not taking place correctly?
Well, we know that information was withheld. We know that, and there's no allegation against the judges on the FISA court. The allegation would be against the presenters of the evidence in order to earn the FISA warrant.
Why do you feel so confident about that? But the memo doesn't include all of the information.
But it's undergirded with facts.
There's just an extrapolation of there is just some permitted information.
Right, but understand probable cause standard would be more likely than not, and then your guilt phase would be beyond a reasonable doubt. The information in the memo gets us to probable cause. That's not any aspersion on the FISA court judges. That would be on the presenters of the evidence. You have a duty when you're an officer of the court, which means any lawyer, whether the local ambulance chaser or somebody at DOJ, of candor before the tribunal. That means you have to give them all relevant information. There's no excuse for, oh gosh, I forgot, or I didn't mean to say that. But you haven't seen all the information, and the American public hasn't seen all the information, and potentially will never see all the information. I hope
it
we
will
do.
only be this portion, and then what portion the Democrats put out in their memo.
No, I really hope we do, because I think that's the thing here. Again, really trying to take away from the partisan angle. The American public should feel secure in their persons, their papers, their privacy, and the due process will be exercised.
You do not really believe that all of the information would ever be publicly released in a FISA court?
Let me say this. I'm privy to information I can't discuss.
All the classified information would be declassified, all of it.
Oh, I would like to see more information declassified on everything from private servers to IRS scandals.
Okay.
Anywhere where there's an allegation
of federal government's been... What you want and what's realistic, though, are very different.
I think the real danger to national security and who we are as a nation is that the levers of power can be leveraged against American citizens without their knowing.
Okay.
So more truth sooner.
All right, we'll leave it right there. Congressman Tom Garrett, Jr.